So I've been on YouTube since 2013, and during my 9 years as a YouTuber, I've started multiple successful YouTube channels, earned a silver play button, and have seen the YouTube algorithm change dramatically. And so in this video, I'm gonna fully explain how the YouTube algorithm actually works and how you as a real estate agent can take advantage of this algorithm to get more views, get more leads, and grow a bigger channel. And real quick, this channel is all about training the next generation of real estate agents in social media, video, and technology. If that interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So the very first thing that the algorithm is going to do is collect what's known as metadata on your video. Some of this metadata is user submitted, and some of it is actually gathered by the AI. And it collects all this data before you even publish the video, so it has a rough idea of what your video is about before it goes active. Now on the user submitted side, you have your title, your tags, and your description. It's going to scan through all three of those, look for search terms and keywords to get an idea of what your video is about. And that's really how you tell the algorithm what you think that your video is about. And back in 2013, the older versions of this algorithm used to put a lot of weight on that user submitted data. But I gotta be honest, today it really does not put nearly as much weight on that data as it does on some of these other elements of the metadata that it collects. Now, one of the other pieces of data that it collects is it actually is gonna create a transcript of every single word that you say in your video. It's gonna scan through that transcript for search terms, for keywords, for phrases in there as well to give an idea of what your video is about. And not only are they listening to every single word you say, they're then going to scan through every single frame of your video, and their AI is going to pick out objects and images that it can identify to once again give it more information about what that video is about. And so if they see the word real estate pop up in your transcript quite often, and they see images of houses, their algorithm is going to say, hey, we're pretty confident this video is about real estate and houses. And in fact, you could upload a video without a title, a tag, or description. YouTube is still going to figure out what that video is about and show it to an audience that it thinks would be a good fit for it. And so today in 2022, YouTube is putting more weight, more emphasis on the data that it collects and less weight, less emphasis on the user submitted data than it did in the past. But it does still look at that user submitted data, and it is still best practices to completely fill in that data. So now let's go over what the best practices are for entering in this user submitted data. And so one, I'd say that you should still do tags. A lot of big YouTubers have stopped doing tags, but I think that for us as real estate agents, it is still important that we do fill in the tag section. And your tags should be search terms that you think your video would be a good fit for. And I would try to get pretty specific with these search terms. And for your tag section, you can have up to 500 characters in that section. I generally try to do at least half of that or more. So it usually works out to about 10 to 15 tags or 10 to 15 search terms I think my video would be a good fit for. Now, something to keep in mind is that they say that the YouTube algorithm can read at a 4th grade reading level. So it fully understands that a search term like moving to Annapolis is very similar to living in Annapolis or relocating to Annapolis or buying a home in Annapolis. It understands that all 4 of the search terms essentially mean the same thing. And I tell you this so that you don't obsess about every single possible variation of a search term. As long as you have some kind of broad search terms like moving to Annapolis or Annapolis real estate agent, something like that, that is good enough to give YouTube that general direction of what you think your video is about. For your description, I think that it is still best practices to write 1 to 2 paragraphs describing your video in organic verbiage, right? You don't want to sound like a robot. You don't want to just list out search terms. It has to be organic in how you describe your video. And in that 1 to 2 paragraphs, you can sprinkle in 2, 3, 4 search terms into that paragraph. And for example, you could type something out like, there are many things to consider before moving to Annapolis, Maryland. As a local real estate agent, I recommend many of my clients to spend a weekend in Annapolis before deciding to buy a home here. So a paragraph like that, I'm integrating complete search terms like moving to Annapolis, but I'm also integrating partial search terms like real estate agent in Maryland in there as well. And once again, the algorithm's smart enough that it can see individual words in different sentences, piece them together to get an idea of what the video is actually about. Now, when it comes to your title, if you can work in a search term or part of a search term into your title, that absolutely can help your video rank for that search term. But it is more important that you have a clickable title than it is that you have an exact search term in your title. For example, I don't want to see you titling a video buying a home in Annapolis, Maryland / moving to Annapolis, Maryland / living in Annapolis, Maryland. Yeah, you have the exact search term in there, but nobody is going to click on that video. Instead, come up with a clickable title that incorporates some of that search term, like 10 things to know before moving to Annapolis, Maryland, or pros and cons of living in Annapolis, Maryland. Those are clickable titles, and they also have a part of that search term in that title. And once again, keep in mind, if you have a good video like pros and cons of living in Annapolis, Maryland, it is very likely that video is also going to rank on YouTube for searches like relocating to Annapolis or buying a home in Annapolis, despite those being slightly different variations of that search term. So after YouTube collects all the metadata on your video and you publish the video, the next thing it's going to do is test out whether people actually click on your video or not. This is known as your click-through rate, and there's 3 main sources of views on YouTube. That's search, browse, and suggested. And it's very possible you could have a high click-through rate on suggested, but low on browse, but medium on search. So each of those is going to treat completely differently and measure the click-through rate of each of those sources of traffic. And so when it comes to search, you could have your video ranking at the very top of a search result almost instantly after you publish a video, and there'll be a little tag next to your video that says new. This indicates that they're still testing out your video. And what they're looking for is whether people actually click on your video or not. And so if they show your thumbnail 100 times for 100 different search results for moving to Maryland, and nobody clicks on your video after 100 impressions, that means you have a 0% click-through rate. YouTube's going to determine like, hey, this video is obviously not a good fit for this search term. But if you, let's say, have a 10% click-through rate, you get 10 clicks out of that 100 impressions, that is a fantastic signal to YouTube that your video is a good fit for that search term. And it's actually what a lot of people overlook when it comes to YouTube, that your click-through rate on your video is one of the most important elements in order to get your videos to rank in search. Now, YouTube's going to run this experiment for browse traffic, which is essentially showing up on a user's home screen, and suggested traffic as well. Now, quick side note, a lot of people don't realize this, but almost all viral videos on YouTube, they go viral from that browse traffic, not from search, not from suggested. They are so sensational that if YouTube just puts it on somebody's home screen, somebody is just impulsively, they have to click on that video and they have to watch it. That is how videos go viral. That's why a lot of YouTubers in other fields, they really focus on that browse traffic specifically, not search traffic like a lot of real estate agents focus on. So now let's go over some of the best practices around improving your click-through rate and actually getting people to click on your videos, because that is incredibly important on YouTube, especially if you want your videos to rank in search or to go viral with the browse source of traffic. And in my opinion, there's 3 main elements that contribute to the click-through rate of your video. And the first one of those is going to be your title. You have to have a clickable title that really gets somebody's attention, really makes them curious and makes them want to click on the video. You want your title to be a headline, like a headline of a newspaper or an article, not a label. Don't label your video how to buy a house. Instead, 10 secrets to buying your first home that your real estate agent never told you. That is a headline. That is a sensational headline that somebody would want to click on much more than how to buy a house. The next factor in click-through rate is going to be your thumbnail image. You have to have a custom thumbnail image that really gets somebody's attention, and it has to be eye-catching and makes them curious about the video. If you're going to put your face in the thumbnail, make sure it's big, at least this big, if not bigger. And if you're going to use text in your thumbnail, make sure it's big and clear and easy to read as well. I generally recommend 5 words or less if you're going to use text, but I would challenge you to try to create a thumbnail with 0 text in it at all. You don't have to have text in all your thumbnails. Now, the third element that influences your click-through rate is the actual concept of the video. If you're making a video on a boring concept, no matter how good your title and thumbnail are, nobody's going to click on it. If you make a video about what is an escrow account, nobody's going to click on that. But if you make a video, 10 hacks to pay your mortgage off early, that is an interesting concept that people actually want to click on. Big YouTubers like Mr. Beast, they sit around all day long just trying to come up with interesting concepts for videos that people would actually click on. So now that YouTube has measured whether or not people actually click on your video or not, there's one more really important element that they're going to take a look at, and that's whether people actually watch your video or not. If YouTube ranks your video in #1 spot in search, somebody clicks on it, but then backs out after 30 seconds of watching your video, why would YouTube keep ranking that video in search? they wouldn't. And this is why keeping people actually watching your video is so important on YouTube. Now, in your analytics, YouTube will show you the average view duration, the amount of time that people watch your video on average, and your average percentage viewed. Both of these numbers are really important. It looks at both of those. You want both of those to be as high as you can. Now, personally, I shoot for a 50% average percentage viewed on my videos, but I really find that 40% is probably the threshold. Anything below 40, if I'm in the 30s, that video generally does not do well. I really need it to be 40 or higher for that video to actually do well and get a lot of views on YouTube. Now, there are a couple techniques that you can use in your videos to increase your average percentage viewed. One of them is to start your video off with a hook. Now, a hook is just a verbal hook that is hyping up the value that they're gonna get out of that video. And if you start your video off with a strong hook, people will watch more of your video because you kind of hyped up the value that they're going to get. So let me give you an example. A boring way to start a video would be like, hey, in this video, I'm gonna give you my 10 tips for buying your first home. Tip number 1. That's a boring intro and people may back out of the video because of that. But instead, if you start a video off with a hook like this, in this video, I'm gonna share with you my 10 techniques that I use to save my clients over $500,000 on their home purchases. And the last technique I bet your own real estate agent has never even heard of. That type of hook is gonna get somebody's attention, and that alone is gonna keep them watching your video longer. Now, in your video, you also wanna get to the content as soon as possible. Don't have too many call to actions in the beginning. Don't have a buffer intro video. Just have a hook and try to get to the content as soon as possible. You also want to keep the pace and the flow of the video going as much as you can. Try to use animations and graphics and B-roll to keep people's attention. And you want to avoid ending language. Ending language is video that you often see at the end of a video like, all right guys, so that's all I have for you today, or well, that's my 10 tips right there. As soon as you say anything like that, people immediately back out of the video, and that hurts your average view duration and your average percentage viewed. Now, one of the best techniques to improve your average view duration, the actual amount of time that people spend watching your videos, is to make longer videos. It sounds simple, but this is a very proven technique on YouTube. And this is why you see the average length of a YouTube video is getting longer and longer and longer, especially now in 2022. And it's not uncommon in now 2022 to see 15, 20, 30-minute long YouTube videos. So if you were to make a 5-minute long video about your city, but somebody else made a 20-minute long video about your city, YouTube's algorithm is probably going to favor that longer video because it has a much higher average view duration. So today in 2022, I shoot for at least a 10-minute long video, and I'm not afraid if that video turns out to be a 15, 20, 25-minute long video. And so those are the 3 most important elements of the YouTube algorithm today in 2022 for real estate agents. But if you guys want to take an even deeper dive into how to use YouTube for lead generation in your business, I want you to check out my completely free training, YouTube Bootcamp for Real Estate Agents, where we take a much deeper dive into this algorithm and give you real-world examples of the types of videos that you should be making to grow your business. This training is completely free, and I'll have a link to it down in the description below. So now that you understand how the algorithm works, make sure you avoid the biggest mistake that real estate agents make on YouTube, which is using the wrong call to actions or using them at the wrong time. We've got an entire video right here breaking down what the right call to actions are in your videos to actually generate leads and when you should be using those. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you over in the next video.